Hello, everyone. I'm very happy that you're here this week. Thank you for your patience. I had actually no voice last week, and you can probably hear that I'm a little froggy still. I'm a little scratchy, my voice, but I'll try to speak more smoothly. Thank you so much for coming. This is the fifth webinar in our series for English language teaching in the Entrepreneurship in English language. I'm Marcelle Morris. And as I said, this is the fifth one, and there's another one coming up next month, the last one in the series. And they've all been fantastic so far. I've watched all of them. They're really good. So you can go back and watch those. And then there's another one to look forward to next month. Let me tell you a little bit about me. I'm from Los Angeles, originally from California, but I haven't lived there in about 14 years. I've lived abroad for a while. I've been teaching more than 30 years, which is hard for me to believe. I've worked in teaching English. I've done educational training. I was an educational administrator for 20 years. I ran an instructional support program in California. And I've worked in China, Ethiopia, Japan. And then the last few years, I was sort of nomadic because of COVID. I'm currently in Beijing right now. So I'm a little bit different time zone. So who are you? Are you already teaching online? Maybe you can answer in the chat. Which ages and subjects have you already been doing it? I'm kind of curious to see what experience you have. So go ahead and answer in the chat. And I'll continue talking about me a little bit. People are doing it already online. Good, yeah. I initially started teaching online at Citrus College in California. I was there for 20 years. And Citrus College is a public college, community college in California. There's about 10,000 students that are there. Oh, a number of people are teaching online. I'm looking at your answers. Interesting. Great. Oh, good. Good answers. Interesting. Nice to look at the answers to this. Thank you. It helps me to know who's here. I helped start the distance education program at Citrus College. So this is my experience with online teaching. In 1995, we started the first online associate's degree, almost fully online associate's degree in the United States in 1995. And I helped start that program with some colleagues. I wrote the first online English composition course there. And I helped start with a friend of mine at another university, start the first tutoring program of its kind in the States. And then I taught online composition there for 13 years. Currently, I'm with the University of Colorado, and I'm here in Beijing at a program they have. It's a public university program that they have here in Beijing, and it's also a public university in the United States. And I've taught online composition here, but not it's not typically what I do. It was only because of COVID. And I think a lot of us, including you, probably, we all had baptism by fire during COVID that we had to figure out how to teach online if we weren't already doing it? Oh, good answers. Teaching online and offline. So a lot of you have experience with it. And like I said, I think during, since COVID, we sort of were forced to figure out how to do that. Great. So a lot of you already have experience doing it. Fantastic. So a little bit more about my background in teaching online. Again, I worked for 2 public institutions, a public college and a public university, and I've only taught composition courses online and some literature courses and some film study courses. So this is my why, who, what, and how that I've taught for online. The courses I've taught are formally structured, state-approved online courses, curriculum that was set up by a college or university and approved by the state. And they're required college composition courses, generally the freshman composition courses that most American students have to take. And they're all grade-based. And they're semester long. So I'm teaching college and university students, and they're semester long. So of course I have to plan a syllabus for the entire semester. And I think a number of you are already teachers. I can see that are used to planning that type of a thing. I've used a number of online course platforms. When we first started, we developed and designed our own web pages, which was a lot of work. I didn't do that. I had help with that, thankfully. But now I've used different online course platforms that already exist, currently Canvas. And because my courses are composition courses generally, or literature courses, they're highly text-based. So there's a lot of materials development when you first start teaching online often. It depends upon the subject, but for my subject, I had to develop a lot of materials myself. And I always teach my classes in response to literature, so they're literature-based. So I do mine a little differently because they're writing courses, but they're also literature-based. So I want the students to have a lot of experience with reading and writing. And my courses have been synchronous and asynchronous. So synchronous is meeting at the same time online, and asynchronously is having materials that the students interact with at their own time. At Citrus, I had about 25 students per class, and I really liked using text chat for those courses. I also had a learning management system. There we had Blackboard. I think they're using Canvas now. And students took it because it was convenient for them. So they were often, working full-time, or they had families, or they were working and had families. So attending a traditional course on campus was difficult for them. At the University of Colorado, I only have about 15 students per course. Again, also composition courses, literature-based. And so when I've taught these courses online, we use Canvas as the learning management program, and Zoom is a part of that. So I've used Zoom. And again, because of COVID, we all got forced into figuring out how to translate our courses. I've done a number of presentations about online education over the years. I've presented maybe about 25 times on some aspect of online education at a number of different places in the US and in China. I've presented on online tutoring communication methods, on instruction methods, cheating in the online environment, which is a big thing. We're talking about AI or Chat GPT in generating content. So this is a topic of conversation that I think we'll see a lot about soon, and we are now. Assessment methods. And that being said, anytime I started a new program, a new way of teaching online, I was quite nervous. And I often felt like I didn't know what I was doing, especially when COVID hit, because our campus didn't quite do the traditional online method right away. So it's every time you have a new sort of platform or program or class, you have to figure it out. And even after 30 years of teaching, I get quite nervous about what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm doing. So here's another little question for you. How do you feel about teaching online so far? And you can answer in the chat. Ignore the Zoom chat. The Zoom chat, sorry. Yeah, you can answer in the chat. How do you feel about teaching online? Are you nervous? Are you excited? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel challenged? Do you feel like you know what you're doing? So here's a little graphic for you. I think a lot of us feel this way. So who do you think you are? Are you an awkward, crazy mess of an individual who tries too hard to impress people and has new talent? We often see ourselves that way. Versus who others think we are, that we're competent, we're pretty cool, we know what we're doing. If you're like me, you might be a little scared. You might start with thinking that you don't really know what you're doing or you aren't confident. And this is kind of common. Thrilled and challenged are some of our answers. Still nervous, yeah. I feel like the beginning of every semester, even after 30 years, I get a little nervous. Yep, yes. Very interesting answers. Yeah, offline teaching. I actually, for the composition classes, I prefer some of the offline teaching. Good. Thank you for your answers. I appreciate that. It helps me to see. So it's normal to feel like we're starting from a place of not knowing. So here's a little video clip of Sir Ken Robinson, who was an education expert in the UK, who talked a lot about education and creativity. And I think somebody's going to cue that up and play that here for you in a moment.
I had to introduce. I did an event a few years ago with the Dalai Lama. There were 2,000 people in the audience, and I had to introduce him. And I was worried. I thought, how do you introduce the Dalai Lama? I mean, what do you say? And then I realized I didn't have to introduce him at all, really, because I think if you have the word "the" in your name, you've arrived socially, haven't you? Ready? Which Dalai Lama are you? That would be the. Actually, it was very interesting. He was asked lots of questions during the session, and he got very quiet for a bit, and then he paused. It must have been like a minute. It's a long time, isn't it? And then eventually he kind of leant forward. He was sitting cross-legged on his chair, and he leant forward, and we all kind of mentally leant forward because thought, here it comes. This is going to be fantastic. And he said, I don't know. And we thought, what do you mean you don't know? You're the Dalai Lama. What do you mean?
I like this video clip. It makes me feel a little better about not knowing. Let's see. Yes, I think I'm sharing the right screen with you. So even if we start with being a little nervous and uncomfortable, we have to remind ourselves that we're already trained, experienced, educated teachers. We've already been doing this. We know how to teach and create lessons and evaluate. Doubting our abilities disproportionately affects high-achieving people. And we're teachers, we're high-achieving people. But we have done this before. We know how to do this. We know we can do it. So it's scary to begin from a place of, I don't know, but our students start in the same place as well. And again, like I said, after all these years of teaching, I still get a little nervous every time I start a new project or a new class. There's some possibility in not knowing. It's a place to start from. And from there, we can take a giant step forward or a small step. So if the Dalai Lama is allowed not to know, so are you, so am I, so are we, right? So today I want to talk about teaching models. I think you probably have a lot of theoretical background about teaching models, but I'll review that a little bit. So who are we teaching? What are we teaching? How are we doing it? And why are we doing it? And how do you start? How do you start teaching online? I'll share some resources, a couple of resources, and some case samples to see what other people are doing online. I think often if we're teaching online, we kind of operate in a vacuum and maybe we don't have a sense of what other people are doing. And then I'll talk about some ways to plan as well. So I thought for fun, since I'm talking about GPT for a second, I'd ask ChatGPT what an online English teaching model is. And here's the answer. And I thought the answer was pretty good. One-on-one lessons, and it explains that, a virtual classroom, giving personalized attention feedback, or group lessons, where a student or instructor works with several students simultaneously, opportunity for interaction and group learning, self-paced learning. Here a student can learn at their own speed or enroll in a course. Blended learning, we started to use this term a lot, that combines online classes with offline classes. This provides students with flexibility to learn at their own pace, but also they get that face-to-face interaction with teachers and other students. And then interactive learning. This method relies on interactive educational software and learning management tools, and students can learn at their own pace. So this was ChatGPT's answer, and I thought it was pretty good. And I've tested ChatGPT in some other ways, and it doesn't always give accurate or correct information, but I was pretty impressed with this answer. So as a reminder, and I know you already know this, but I'll probably be sharing a lot of information that's sort of reinforcing what you already know and what you already do. So in teaching, our teaching models, we describe a process. A teaching model describes a process of specifying and producing particular environmental situations which cause the student to interact in such a way that a change occurs in behavior. Teaching models are instructional designs, a pattern or plan, which can be used to shape a course, to select instructional materials. Teaching models are specific ways of teaching and learning that are intended to achieve certain kinds of goals. So we have an environmental situations, interaction. We want specific changes in behavior, or their plans. How do we shape the course? We select materials, and there are specific ways of teaching and learning, and then we have goals. And this is quoted from Joyce and Weil. So here's a little schemata that I tried to put together, which I'm not very good at. So we have models of teaching traditionally in offline or on ground. We have goals, an environment, instructional materials, and activities, right? And then we're translating that into an online method, an online model of teaching. So yes, we still have goals when we're teaching online. And then our environment often is some kind of platform that we're using to connect and teach the students, whether it's live, synchronous, or asynchronously. We still have instructional materials often, and then how do we share those in the online environment? And then activities, of course, also, and then how do we carry out those activities? What are the methods we use? So translating teaching from on ground to online, we have similar elements, right? And we have activities that can be modified by the methods we use online. But still, how do we design an online environment? This is the question I think that we are stumped with when we start, and actually probably as we go along. How do you teach online for a public institution, or how do you do it privately? And we have so many choices when we choose to start teaching. How will we do it, to whom, and what levels? And a lot of these questions you probably already answered for yourself. And I saw your answers earlier that did indicate some of this. Now, I think the why is easy, why we would do it. So teaching online, and if you're teaching privately or for a public institution, the why is easy. There's the freedom for us, there's convenience for students. If you're doing it privately, of course, one of the whys is income, a big why. We have a lot of autonomy, and it's, as I say, convenient. And best of all, if we're at home, generally nobody can see the bottom half of us. So we are often in our pajama bottoms, right? That's also a plus that I believe exists. And what about the who or what or how? So the level of who are you going to teach? Kids, high school, university, professional adults, adult learners, and what? Which topic? Yes, I know English, but what kind of, what part of English? Writing, conversation, phonetics, vocabulary, grammar. We probably all have areas that we're more comfortable with teaching than others. And how? Which online methods of delivery will you use? Will it be visual, audio, like we're doing now, an audio-visual type of thing? Will you be teaching multiple students and have groups and use breakout rooms? Will you have a hybrid of online, fully online or partially? Will you do it live, synchronously or asynchronously, or have a component in both? And will you use an existing learning management system, or will you build your own? And then who are you teaching for? With a school or a company, or are you going to start out or graduate to doing a freelancing through your own business, through a marketplace or agency maybe? And then again, starting your own business. And how do we adapt the lessons for the online classroom? Where are you comfortable? So I'm sure you've seen some version of this before. This is the common European framework that shows the levels that's often referred to. So there's beginners, intermediate, advanced. We have the A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. For me personally, I've always felt more comfortable with intermediate to advanced students, and that's generally who I teach. So just as a reminder of that, of a reference for the levels. But how do we do it? There's so many ways, there's so many tools. The choices are almost overwhelming. We could experiment with graphical presentations. We could use a virtual whiteboard. We could try out a flipped classroom method, a gaming tool, a survey tool, an LMS tool, a whiteboard, a video tool, a presentation tool. But all these choices are overwhelming, right? When we experience choice overload, we can experience frustration and confusion and regret. We can be dissatisfied and even have choice paralysis. I often feel this way with all the various tools I hear about. But we have a saying in English, we have a solution to this, the KISS method. Have you ever heard of the KISS method? K-I-S-S. Keep it super simple, right? Start simple. You could experiment with all the tools, but you could just start with an online platform, or even just text chat, pictures, an actual whiteboard, maybe even, or an online whiteboard. Teaching online will be challenging enough that dealing with a possible new platform and method will make it more complicated. So I would say don't try to introduce tools that you aren't familiar with. They are just means of delivery. They aren't required. They won't enhance the learning if they're not used properly. Again, start simple and introduce tools as you are comfortable doing so. So to talk about a couple of the established businesses that already exist, if you're thinking about teaching online, or new to teaching online, or new to thinking about doing it privately for income, there's a number of online businesses that already exist. And here's a couple that I looked at, and I think these are accessible in Russia. So Sky English, Sky Teach, maybe some of you have heard of this, and I don't really know that much about these programs, honestly, so I can't say too much about them, but you might want to check them out if you wanted to get started with an established platform or business to get the hang of it. teacheron.com is another. And then italki italki.com. I have a friend that has used italki and she likes it. So you might check those out if you're looking for other options of how to start for income. Privately, I mean. I think generally most of us teach for income. We don't do it for love of our subject. Cambly is one that a number of my friends use, and I've heard good things about Cambly. And I want to say too, before you start with any business, you might want to just see if you can read some reviews about it. Because I do have some friends that have taught for some businesses and they have a very difficult time getting paid. So not every established online teaching or tutoring business is going to be reputable. So check them out first and see if you can find some online reviews about it. So Cambly is one that I know a number of people use. And what I did, and you might do this as well, I went on to Cambly and you can sign up. I signed up as a student and you can have a free 5-minute lesson. So I went on to Cambly and I signed up I logged on for a free 5-minute lesson and this lovely tutor came on and I basically said I was curious to see what he did and I wanted to know how he tutored on Cambly. And he was really great. For 5 minutes. He kind of told me what he did. And he said often he's there just on a drop-in basis like he was for me. So he can't have a plan yet because he doesn't know who he's going to meet with. So often he's very flexible and just responds sort of immediately to whoever comes on. But there are also lessons in Cambly. So if somebody comes on and they don't entirely know what they want, he has some lessons that he can click onto to bring up. Excuse me. So you see on the left part of the screen, that's a slide that he controls. So what is your name? Where are you from? Why are you learning English? That was something he put on there. And then before our quick 5 minutes was up, he clicked to another one just to show me what it was like. And then on the right side, there was a chat box and there's probably some other features there. But again, in 5 minutes, we didn't get to that. So you might, if you're interested in it, you might want to see how it works. You could go on there as a student. Again, he might have somebody that schedules with him repeatedly, or he just might have a drop-in session. Excuse me. And then a number of people I know use Zoom or Google Classroom, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with both of those. And the good thing is they're both free. Yes, there is, you can pay for a license for Zoom, but it's quite expensive. If you sign up for a free account, you can have a lesson on there for 40 minutes. It'll only allow you for 40 minutes. So your lesson has to be for 40 minutes, which is not a bad thing. There's nothing sacred about an hour, a lesson being an hour. And also, if you are advertising, you're starting your own business right away, maybe you're advertising your services on social media. So you can use existing conferencing tools like Zoom or Google Classroom. So know that they're out there. And I've used Zoom a lot, but I haven't actually used Google Classroom, but I know people who have, and they really like it. So yeah, Zoom is easy to sign up for. Probably a lot of you have it, but if you don't, you can go in there and sign up. And then you can do 40-minute sessions. You get an invitation that you can send to somebody else that they can log on to that. And here's a sample of what Zoom can do. Honestly, I haven't used most of these features on here, but I brought them up just to show you. So there's a chat box feature on Zoom. You can send files in there. You can use emojis, or the students can use emojis. You can do a screenshot in the chat box, but the chat function is limited and it can't be archived. So I don't really like that. So I often am using Zoom for the audio video part of it. And then I'm using another chat program because I have a running archive of the chat that the students can see. So in China, I use WeChat, which is very popular here. You may or may not know about it. And then also on Zoom, on the left part here, there's a whiteboard function that I opened. I have never played with this before, honestly, but I brought it up today just so you could see what it looks like. There were some templates that I could insert there. There's this template, where are you from? I could draw on there. I could put a sticky note. There's different shapes you could bring in for various reasons. And then the functions on Zoom, the options on Zoom, there's a mute button. And I actually use that a lot, honestly, because you don't want the students to hear everything. You can stop the video as well. Sometimes I turn my video off, especially when I'm asking students to work on something. I don't want just my big head staring at them while they're doing it. You can list the participants and see who's in the room. You can chat, as I said. You can share your screen, which is a fantastic feature. I love this. I'm sharing my screen right now with you all through Zoom, actually. You can do a poll. You can write a poll on there. The students can choose reactions: happy face, sad face, thumbs up. Again, whiteboard. If you had a group of students, you can put them in breakout rooms. Because I have 15 students, often I put them into groups. There's a way to automatically put them into like 5 groups of 3. And then they go into these individual groups. And then I can go to the groups and visit them and talk to them about what they're working on. You can record the Zoom session. And you can enable a live transcript, which I think is really nice, especially if somebody is learning the language. So my students are university students. They're Chinese students, but they're accepted into the University of Colorado. But still, they often, if I have Zoom on, they will enable the chat transcript, which I think is a great thing to do, because I'm talking, but then it sort of gives a captioning to what's going on there. And so just to reiterate, and probably you already know this, but the one thing we need to be careful of is what we're showing on our camera, right? If I try to hold something up for you to read, it's very difficult. So here's a little picture of me holding up a book. Of course, you can't see it, right? It's difficult to see. It's not clear. It's not very effective. So I really love the screen sharing. So if I wanted to share this book, I could take a picture of it, and instead of holding it up, I could share my screen. I could share that picture so the students could see it. I can share video. I can share pictures. I can share PowerPoint. I can share web pages. So this is clear, right? I want to say too, if you share your screen in Zoom, you can choose what is on your computer that you want to share. And I want to just caution you that make sure you're sharing only what you want the students to see. If you have other windows open or other programs open on your laptop, you don't want them to see any confidential or personal information or chat with your mother or something. So you can choose the window, but just be careful of that. Excuse me. This is the Google Classroom. And again, I haven't played with it too much, but I went in here just to mess with it to see what it did. So I could go in here and I created a classroom and I called it Teaching English Online. And there's sort of an announcement area. It links with Google Calendar and some of the other Google products. So I could make an assignment in there and it'll link with Google Calendar, as I said. So this was kind of funny. I set up this class and I made a fake assignment on there and it put it on my calendar. So the other day I had this reminder on my calendar for an assignment. And it took me a moment to realize it was the fake assignment that I had set up. I thought, what do I have due today on my calendar? But it links with all the other Google products. So it's great because it's free. And then you can give students access to it, of course. And then in the Google Classroom, you can link it with Google Hangouts. So I haven't used Google Hangouts too much either, but it's a way to meet online with students. It has a chat function, an audio function, a video function. You can create your own chats or spaces and invite in whoever you want. You can assign tasks and share files. And again, it links with the other Google products. So it looks fantastic. Google is really doing great things. Now, for me, I'm doing something a little different again. I'm teaching composition courses for a university. So we have Canvas, and this is what my Canvas page looks like for one of my classes. So my home page is my syllabus. But there's a section for announcements I can make, discussions. I have the students respond to things there. I have them post, because I teach composition, I have them post their working theses there and I check them. Sometimes I give them writing assignments there. I have weekly modules that I can set up, and then grades, etc. And then for us, Zoom is built into Canvas. And since I've taught composition, I really like having a chat. I really like not using audio visual for my classes because I want the students to write and read. So this is, I know it's kind of hard to read, but it's an example of WeChat. Excuse me. And here I'm having a discussion with the student. I teach literary critical theory. So I'm asking the student, I'm telling them what literary critical theories they could use. And the student's asking about which theories, which article, and then I give them some examples, and this conversation continues. And then I tell a student some of her paper is missing. Can she please re-upload it? But again, even though, I like it because it's writing, they're writing and it's a writing class. And I find it's really hard to get the students to write unless they make them. But then I have this running chat that they can see. And if I didn't have WeChat, I've used something where I could archive it. I could save it and post it to my class site so students could read it. So here's a conversation between an instructor about a paper again, the students asking questions about what work they might want to focus on, again, in response to literature. The student saying, I read Hills Like White Elephants, but I didn't really like it. I like the yellow wallpaper better. I think I want to write about it. And just a discussion gets started. So for me, this works for the type of classes that I teach. And some resources that I've come across from friends that I know that teach privately online. And I know there are so many places online where you can find instructional materials, resources, and lesson plans. So again, it's almost overwhelming, right? So I think it's pretty easy now, though, to find good instructional materials. But here are a few that I sort of picked out. Engu Daily News is great if you wanted to find an easy news article to discuss, to share with students. AE, American English, has a lot of materials. Open, the online professional English network, which also has training programs for instructors as well. British Council is fantastic, right? British Council is sort of the pinnacle of places to find information for teaching. Cambridge English, TEFL, the TEFL website, TEFL.net has all kinds of information, including jobs listed on there. ESL Brains is another one. My friends have used eslbrains.com, and then linguahouse.com, just to give you a couple to look at if you haven't looked at these before, if you're looking for new places for material. And then if you want more places for assistance in how to teach online, there's a Pearson handy guide to teaching online that is online. British Council, again, has a lot of information with getting started teaching online. And Cambridge also has this Future Learn program. And it's an online course. It's self-paced, and you can have free access to the course for a month. And I started to look at it, and it was really great. So teaching online and teaching on ground is similar, but it's different, right? It's more intense in a way. Usually in a classroom, it's sort of diffused. There's a lot of people there. It's not just us with one-on-one person very often. And when we're in the classroom, we have dead air, right? When there's silence, but it doesn't feel so bad in the classroom, right? We can pause for a second. We can ask the students to look at something while we go on to something else, the next material that we want to share. But in the online environment, especially in video conferencing, to have dead air, if I just stop talking for a moment, it feels very weird and uncomfortable. So how do we get around that? What do we do? I think we need to be kind of comfortable with that happening sometime. It's not the end of the world, but it feels kind of magnified. Again, I would practice with using mute or camera off for a second when you're switching to something new. And we have to remember that responding, when we ask students to respond, it takes some time. And really our students we should be looking at building lessons where our students talk a lot more than we do, right? So here's a question for you that you can answer in the chat. What percentage of time should a teacher talk? 80 to 100%, 60 to 80%, 20 to 30%. What do you say? I see some answers coming in there. 20%, 30 to 40, 20 to 30. The less, the better. You're all so smart. You already know. Right. So teacher talk time should be about 20 to 30% of the class time. This is what the research says, right? Every situation is different. But we try to allow for 80% of the class time to be dedicated to allowing students to talk. So our job is to create rooms filled with student voices, not to be the main voice. And right, it depends upon the student's level. If they're very low, sometimes we have to give a lot of instruction and modeling of behavior and language. Some maybe tips and standards. I'm sure you've probably come across these yourselves. A lot of companies have standards about what's in your background, for instance. What will the students see? I'm blurring my background right now. There's nothing bad back there. It's just a wall and a radiator. Do you have a proper microphone? If you will use a headset, remember the microphone sits here, so sometimes you can hear breathing, mouth breathing. What's your internet speed like? I've seen people who you can see their bathroom in the back, maybe shut the bathroom door, or maybe laundry hanging, no messes in the background. A friend of mine was online. We had a meeting and her husband walked through the back and he was changing clothes and she didn't realize it. So we have to be careful of these things. What kind of noise is in the situation in your, wherever you're at? Are there pets? Maybe you don't want your pets bothering you. You got to put them out of the room, cats or dogs. Are there beds? Maybe that feels a little too intimate to show. We don't want to show any sensitive information. And we want to use as much body language as we can to communicate, especially since generally it's just our head, like Oz. And depending upon the level too, there's various body language we can use, like here, listening, cupping our ear because we want them to repeat what they're saying that we couldn't hear them. So pictures and images go a long way. But really, how do we teach online again? I wanted to show you some case samples. I have a number of friends who teach online in different ways than I do, who work for their own businesses or they work for established companies. And I want to show you some of these. So notice these and tell me if you see anything that you see that they have in common, okay? These are my friends, Dave and Rebecca. They're English. They both tutor on Cambly. Excuse me. And they said, many students use it for conversation practice, not structured lessons. We basically chat with them about their day and correct any mistakes. Sometimes they read something aloud from Engu Daily News, and we discuss, or Cambly has lesson plans available too. Here's my friend Jen. She's American. She's been living abroad for a long time. She works for an online teaching company in Poland. She says, we have free reign to teach whatever. I teach mostly B2 general English and 1 business class. We have 3 or 4 textbooks. We can choose from along with web lessons from ESL Brains and Lingua House. Most students know English and they want practice. It is pretty casual. Here's Olivia. She works with a company called Preply. She's nomadic, traveling the world. She says, I don't have certain structures. I teach depending upon what the students want to learn, mostly adults. I have 3 kids in elementary school. Students enrolled after they read my profile and watched a video of me. For lessons, I just looked up free materials online based on the student's English level. And then here I have Anne Crutchfield, and you might have seen her in the second webinar series. Anne has her own business called LA English Tutor. She says, I love the freedom of planning my own schedule. With kids, I might work on academic English. Each is an individual. I like the autonomy. The kids decide, they make choices, and I model habits. And then here's Melanie. She did the first webinar in the series. She has her own private English tutoring teaching business called Bounce English. She said, I tailor to what students want. I plan with the student. I need to be accommodating, flexible. I plan for groups versus individuals. And intimacy develops. It's not for everyone, but it's effective for some. So anything in common? Did you notice anything in common in these case samples? Yeah, I see this. So everybody is quite relaxed. The teachers prefer freedom while teaching to strict online structured lessons. Yes. Flexibility, absolutely, are some of the answers we're getting. Great. Yeah, they all said that. And I was really surprised. They all just seemed very, I don't mean to say casual, but they are casual and informal when they need to be. Very focused on the students. Yeah, great. What does the student want? Very flexible. When we teach for a public institution, sometimes we can't be as flexible and adaptable because we have a certain curriculum that we have to follow. In this, the student is generating the curriculum. Great, great answers. So yes, the similarities are mostly informal, responsive, accommodating, flexible, adaptable, often unstructured. And I wanted just to show you, here's Anne Crutchfield's website. She has a website that she's developed. It's fantastic. She has a lot of good materials on there if you're interested in looking at it. It's LA English Tutor. She makes short videos that she posts to social media that are fantastic. They're really good. And she uses Zoom for meeting online. And then Melanie's site is bounceenglish.rocks. So you could take a look at it here if you wanted to see what her website looks like. If you're looking at developing your own for your own business. Or again, you have the option maybe of advertising on social media or with an established platform. And I wanted to show you a couple of other friends of mine. So it was kind of funny. I asked all these friends of mine that already teach online what they do. And a lot of them gave me like very casual, informal answers. So I thought, what? I don't understand what they're saying. They were like, well, you know, I'm flexible, I'm accommodating. But these two instructors gave me very, very detailed information, which is generally how instructors are. We give a lot of detailed information. So one of them is Emily. She's American Hungarian. She has her own teaching business called Teacher Emily LLC. And then another friend is Kathy. She's South African. She teaches literature. She teaches courses through different businesses. So Emily, here's a more structured version of it. She does an assessment. She plans the lessons. She always has a backup plan. She teaches all ages and levels. She said she started with Chinese children, but now feels comfortable with all ages and levels. She's actually one of the virtual educators working through the program now. She uses Google, the Google Meet, Calendar, Classroom. She creates 2 Google Docs per student. One is for her to take notes on, and one is for the student, so the student can keep track of what they worked on. So I thought that was a great idea. She always plans for a warm-up, some kind of free talk, a lesson focus, and then she corrects grammar. She corrects and gives grammar tips. She keeps a list of conversation topics to fill in at the end if there's room. She uses websites and downloads materials, downloaded textbooks. She screen shares a lot of her materials in the Google Classroom, and she uses the British Council a lot. So she doesn't have a website, but she shares a lot of her materials on payteachers.com. So she gets a lot of materials there, and she puts materials on there. So I don't know if you've seen this website, but if you can download materials that other instructors have made, other teachers have made, but you have to put something on there as well. And then my friend Kathy, wow, she does it all. She's fantastic. She teaches literature courses privately, and she'll do a warm-up discussion, a wrap-up. She's flexible. She'll plan how many lessons each book is going to take. She'll teach a whole book. For instance, she'll teach Hamlet, which she'll tell the service it's going to take 20 classes, depending upon the level, maybe 15 for high-functioning students. She prepares the PowerPoints, homework, marks the homework, and writes feedback for each of the students. So hers are very involved and highly structured. She teaches writing online. With the higher level students, she uses Bloom's taxonomy for analysis. She has them study literary devices, irony, figurative language. With the younger kids, she focuses on comprehension and understanding. She teaches writing for test prep, all kind of test prep. And the adult lessons always start with a topical chat, even if it's a writing class or a literature class. She teaches conversation as well. She says you cannot just chat. Most students have to have a focused need. She finds that they're usually preparing something specific. She has a lot of students that are traveling and they want to study English, or they're going to study abroad or going for an interview, so it's easy to set up curricula. She has prompts from PowerPoint presentations, pictures, diagrams, etc. And she uses sites where she can find ESL questions and lesson plans. And she pushes the students to respond in chat. And she makes sure that she gives clear correction and moves them along. She said she had an Italian chemistry student who was going into her PhD year and needed to learn chemistry in English. And she got a textbook, a chemistry textbook, and the student told her what topics to cover. So she copied diagrams and processes, and she got the student to label and explain and provide rationale of the outcomes and experience. She said, most of the time I didn't have any idea what she was talking about, but it was fun and it was in English, and she's doing very well in her PhD program. With children, she said you have to get their attention. Excuse me. She plays games with them. She has question techniques to elicit the grammar. Pardon me. I should be muting my microphone there for a second while I cough. She'll ask them, where are you sitting? What are you staring at? What is your mother doing? She gets the students to ask her questions and answer them. It forces them to use the questioning words. She has charts with people's names, their likes and dislikes, sports, so she can ask questions from that chart. What hobby does John have? What food does Jenny like? Where does Mary live? And then she ends with their bio, their dislikes, sports. Pardon me for 1 second. I need to mute myself because I have to cough. One moment. So children need to be engaged. She sends them around their houses to collect things or ask their parents a question or bring me back something that bounces. She says the tweens are trying to be cool. They like to talk about clothes, shopping, Barbie. She says, show me your favorite outfit. She brings colorful, interesting pictures. For example, she showed a picture of an ice hotel and had a discussion about if the topic was weather or hotels around the world or eccentric places to stay. Pardon me. So for class interaction, she'll often have classes that she has multiple students. For the group, she asks questions. She pushes the students to use sentences, not just answer in single words. She never allows a one-word answer. So she tells them they can't copy each other either. She pushes hard for examples. So if she's teaching Harry Potter to children, she'll say, who is always breaking the rules? And give me examples of when you've broken rules. She doesn't allow them to use school examples to talk about what they did in school. She says that vocabulary is too easy. The students interact with it every day. So she pushes them to use other vocabulary and become familiar with it. The classes are immersive, so she doesn't allow dictionaries, but sometimes she'll use a Google search. So again, start simple, establish what you want and plan accordingly, and then establish what the students want and plan accordingly. First, learners need to know what they want so you can plan, right? If students are vague about what they want, this results in vague and unhelpful lessons. The learner provides the content, the input. The teacher provides the form, the format, the language that meets the learner's communicative needs. The lesson goalposts might change throughout, and that's okay. If it helps you, you might want to do a needs analysis if you're going to meet with somebody multiple times, get information about who they are, what they need. Here's a person who's Polish, upper intermediate, works in medical sales. She needs English for working in sales, traveling to the US 3 times a year to conferences, and needs to speak English. She needs it for hotels, restaurants, and shops. She needs it at the conference to negotiate sales. So then you could ask, okay, what skills does she need? Functional language does she need? The topics, does she need grammar? What's the anticipated problems? And if you're designing a class or a lesson, you can use the needs analysis to give you ideas of what to focus on. Think about the lesson constraints. How many hours will you meet? You can make changes as you go. There must be opportunities for continuous redefinition of needs. And I know you know how to make a lesson plan, but just as a review, you can set up a lesson plan if you'd like. And there are many places online where you can find lesson planning worksheets to fit your needs. So in summary, again, who, what, when, where, and how, and why are you doing it? Are you going to start with an established platform? Or are you going to jump right into your business or work from one to the other? Be flexible, adaptable, use what you already know how to do as a teacher, of course. And I hope you have fun doing it, because that's part of the goal for us, I think, as instructors. There's no law that says learning or teaching can't be fun. So if you're having a good time, chances are your students are too. And I want to thank you very, very much for your time and for coming. I really appreciate it. Sorry we had to reschedule, but as you can tell, I'm still trying to get a voice back. And next month will be the last session in the webinar, 5 best practices for consideration for Edupreneurship with Teresa Nguyen on May 10th. And then for me, next Wednesday night will be the Q&A session. If you have any further questions, you can leave them and I'll answer the questions there, or I can bring more materials and resources to share. So you're welcome to sign up for my Q&A consultation session next week. And I know a Padlet link is being shared for you in the chat for any questions that you might have. But again, thank you so much for coming. And I'm very sorry about my coughing and my voice. I'm trying to get over this. It's been sticking with me for a while. I hope you have a great evening and I hope you have a lot of fun in your online teaching practices. Thank you so much.